Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are getting into something that really forms the bedrock of sophisticated English. We're looking at the architecture of complex sentences.
And this is really for anyone who feels like they've hit a plateau. You know, you feel fluent, but you want your writing, your professional communication to have that structural integrity.
And the C1, C2 level of control.
Absolutely. We've got a great set of notes here that really zero in on clarity, on complexity, and maybe most importantly on connection. How you link big ideas together without the whole thing falling apart.
Yeah, and if there's one single idea that ties everything together today, it's this. Understanding the role of the clause inside the sentence. It sounds a little academic, I know.
A little bit, yeah.
But honestly, if you can master what we're talking about today, it is a massive shortcut. Your writing will get better, and your ability to understand really dense academic material will just skyrocket.
Okay, so let's lay it out. We've pinpointed 4 areas that are, let's be honest, notorious for tripping people up.
First, compound relative pronouns. We're calling them the all-in-one words, things like whoever and whatever.
Then we're hitting agreement sentences using so and neither. And that tricky inversion that's absolutely required.
Yes, the non-negotiable part. Third, we're going deep on that clauses when they're used as appositives, which is essential for explaining abstract nouns like fact or idea.
And that leads right into our final point, how you can tell the difference, practically, between those appositive clauses and the much more common adjective clauses.
It's a real workout in precision. So let's jump right in. Section 1. Compound relative pronouns.
Okay, so let's start with those all-in-one words.
Right. So we're talking about whoever, whomever, whatever, and whichever. For anyone who's, maybe struggled with relative clauses before, what makes these 4 words so powerful? What's the core concept here?
The core concept is just pure efficiency. A compound relative pronoun isn't just a pronoun, it's like a self-contained package. It bundles a general noun, what we call the antecedent, words like someone or anything. It bundles that with the relative pronoun, like who or which. It's all in one word.
So if I use the word whatever, I'm basically saying anything that, but in a single, more elegant word. That's the efficiency.
Exactly. And this leads to the most important rule, the one that causes all the problems. Because that antecedent, that noun, is already baked into the word. You absolutely must not add another one. You can't put another noun in front of it. The CRP is doing 2 jobs at once.
And this is the mistake we see everywhere, right? Even in, academic writing sometimes. The redundancy of saying anything that whatever you choose.
Yes. And it's more than just redundant. It actually breaks the sentence structure.
How so?
Well, you're creating a conflict. If whatever already means anything that, then when you say anything that whatever, you've basically introduced the subject twice. The sentence has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
It just grinds to a halt.
So it's not just clunky, it's structurally flawed. The correct way is just to start with the CRP, whatever you choose. Because anything that part is already understood.
Precisely. The analogy in the notes is perfect. It's like an all-in-one shampoo and conditioner.
Right.
You use the one product. You don't use the shampoo and then use the all-in-one right after. It's a test of whether you get what's happening inside that word.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's apply that. The first distinction to make is between whatever and whichever.
Right. Both deal with things, but the context is everything.
Whatever means, as we said, anything that. So you're talking about a situation with, unlimited choice. It's general, unrestricted.
It's when the whole universe of options is on the table. You see it in examples like, whatever you decide, make sure you can justify it. The set of possible decisions is wide open.
And at a higher level, a C2 level, it carries a lot of weight. Something like, whatever consequences may arise, the policy must be implemented consistently.
Yes. That whatever is so powerful there. It covers every single possible outcome, positive or negative, which makes the statement about the policy sound absolute and unshakable.
The commitment is total because the set of options is total. So how does whichever shrink that universe?
It shrinks it dramatically. Whichever means any one of a limited set of options, you can only use it when you're choosing from a specific countable or, defined group of things.
So this would be key in things like proposal writing or in a lab report where you've mainly tested 3 different methods and you have to pick one.
Absolutely. The C1 example nails it. Whichever solution proves most effective, the committee will adopt it. That sentence immediately tells the reader we're not talking about any solution in the world.
Right. We're talking about one from the small group that was presented and discussed.
Exactly. And if you mistakenly used whatever there, it would actually misrepresent the situation. It would signal that the committee is open to any idea, which is almost certainly not the case in a formal process. So the choice between the two words really signals how controlled the selection process is.
Okay, now for the one that I think causes the most headaches, even for native speakers,
Yeah.
the choice between whoever and whomever.
Ah, yes. The big one.
It feels archaic to some people, but for formal writing, academic, legal, it is absolutely non-negotiable. Why do people get this wrong so often?
Because they look in the wrong place for the answer. They analyze the main sentence, the big picture.
Which seems logical.
It does. It's a logical trap.
Yeah.
The absolute key rule, and you have to drill this into your brain, is that the choice between whoever and whomever depends only on the job the pronoun is doing inside its own little clause.
So what it's doing in the main sentence is completely irrelevant for this specific choice.
Completely irrelevant.
But wait, that feels so counterintuitive. Let's take an example like the prize will be awarded to, and then you have the clause. The whole clause is the object of the preposition to. So my brain immediately wants to use the object form whoever.
And that's the trap. That's what 90% of people do. You have to force yourself to ignore the main sentence and zoom in. Just isolate that dependent clause and analyze its own little ecosystem.
Okay, so break it down for us. When do we use each one?
You use whoever, the subject form, when the pronoun is the subject of the verb inside the relative clause.
And whomever.
You use whomever, the object form, when the pronoun is the object, the receiver of the action, inside the relative clause.
Okay, let's walk through that B2 example very slowly. The prize will be awarded to whoever finishes first.
Okay, so ignore the prize will be awarded to. Just look at the clause. Whoever finishes first.
Right.
Inside that clause, who is doing the finishing?
Whoever is, it's the subject of the verb finishes.
Exactly. So you must use the subject form, whoever. It doesn't matter that the whole clause is an object in the main sentence. The internal grammar of the small clause dictates the form.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. So now let's contrast that with the C1 example. The professor will recommend whomever the panel selects.
Same process. Isolate the clause.
Whomever the panel selects.
Okay. In that small world, who is doing the selecting?
The panel is the subject. The panel is doing the selecting.
And what are they selecting?
They're selecting whomever. So whomever is the object. It's receiving the action.
So you must use the object form, whomever. See how it works? You just have to build that mental checkpoint.
Right. Let's try a really complex one. The source mentioned a C2 scenario, where the whole CRP clause is the subject of the main sentence, but the pronoun inside is still an object. That sounds like a brain twister.
It is, but the rule holds. Give it a shot. How about this? Whomever the hiring committee appoints will have immense power.
Whoa, okay, so the entire clause, whomever the hiring committee appoints, all of that is the subject of the main verb will have.
Correct.
But if I zoom in on just the clause, whomever the hiring committee appoints, the committee is the subject doing the appointing.
Yeah.
And whomever is the object being appointed.
Totally.
So it has to be whomever, even though the whole block of words is the subject of the sentence.
That's it. You've got it. That is the definition of structural control. You prioritize the internal logic of the small clause over its bigger function. If you can do that consistently, you've solved one of the trickiest puzzles in formal English.
Okay, that was a fantastic deep dive into those all-in-one words. Now let's shift gears. Section 2 is all about how we show agreement in a really structured, formal way. We're talking about agreement sentences with so and neither.
And right off the bat, we have to stress the one absolute rule here.
Inversion.
Inversion, always. It's not optional. These structures exist to create a formal parallel, and they achieve that by inverting the word order.
Which means the auxiliary verb, or the be verb, comes before the subject. Just like in a question, it's that little flip that makes it sound so formal. But it's also the step that so many people forget.
They do. They just rush through it. So let's start with the affirmative pattern, using so. The basic structure is you have your first sentence, then and so, then the auxiliary or be verb, and then the second subject.
And the real challenge is picking the right auxiliary verb because it has to match the verb tense from the first sentence.
Exactly. So let's take a B2 example. She remains calm under pressure, and so do her colleagues.
Okay, so the verb in the first part is remains, which is simple present. It doesn't have its own auxiliary, so we have to bring in a form of do.
Right. And since colleagues is plural, it's do. And notice the order. And so do her colleagues. Not, and so her colleagues do.
Right, the inversion. What if the tense changes, let's say to a perfect tense?
Then the auxiliary changes with it. Look at the C1 example. He has demonstrated remarkable resilience, and so has his team.
So the first clause uses has demonstrated, so the auxiliary is right there for you. You just grab the has and put it in the second part, and so has his team.
Exactly. And this gets even more important at a C2 level when the subject is really long or complex. A long subject can trick you into putting the verb at the end.
Give us an example of that.
Sure. The theory has withstood intense scrutiny for over a decade, and so has the methodology supporting it.
Ah, I see. The subject there is the methodology supporting it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big chunk. My instinct might be to say, and so the methodology supporting it has.
And that would be the common error. You
Yeah.
lose the formal structure. The rule is absolute. The auxiliary must come right after so, no matter how long the subject is. The length doesn't change the rule.
Okay, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Now, what about the negative pattern with neither? This feels like it adds another layer of complexity.
It does, because of the embedded negative. The structure is the first sentence has a not, and then it's and neither, then the auxiliary or be verb, and then the second subject.
And the critical rule here, I'm guessing, is about double negatives.
You've got it. Because the word neither already means not either, it's already negative. So the auxiliary verb that follows it must be in the affirmative form.
Right. Avoid the double negative at all costs.
So in the B2 example, he doesn't tolerate dishonesty, and neither do his peers. The first part has doesn't, but the second part has the positive auxiliary do. You'd never, ever say, and neither don't his peers.
Right. And this applies to the be verb too. Like in the C1 example, the proposal was not financially viable, and neither was the alternative.
Exactly. The first part is was not, so the second part just uses the affirmative was, and neither was the alternative. It's clean. It's parallel.
And at the C2 level, you can see how this becomes really crucial for, say, legal or ethical statements.
Absolutely. The candidate did not meet the ethical standards required, and neither did those who endorsed him. The did not in the first part forces the use of did in the second. It creates this very precise, formal link between the failure of the candidate and the failure of his supporters.
So this all comes down to what you call the key rule, picking the right auxiliary. Let's make this a super practical checklist for our listeners.
Good idea. So when you want to write one of these sentences, you first have to look at the verb in the first sentence. That's step one.
Okay, so category 1. If the first sentence uses a be verb am, is, are, was, were, what do you do?
You use be in the second part. The data is unreliable, and so is the conclusion. Simple.
Category 2. The first sentence uses a main verb in a simple tense, like walked or provides.
Then you must use a form of do, does, or did. The team submitted its report, and so did the consultants. Submitted is past tense, so you need did.
Category 3. The first sentence is in a perfect tense. It has a have, has, or had.
Then you just reuse that have, has, or had. They have completed the analysis, and so has the review board.
And finally, category 4. The first sentence has a modal verb like will, can, or must.
You use that exact same modal. The board will reject the proposal, and so will the shareholders. You just carry it over.
This dependency is everything. You can't just guess or throw do in there every time. You have to analyze the first clause.
You do, and just to hammer it home one last time, remember to actually do the inversion.
Right.
If you say, the findings were significant, the only correct agreement is, and so were the implications, it's not, and so the implications were, that little flip of the word order is the whole point of the structure. It's a formal signal of a parallel truth.
Okay, we have handled pronoun logic and forced inversion. Now let's get into the world of abstract ideas, which is really the heart of academic and analytical writing. We're on to section 3. That clauses as appositives.
Yes, and this is so important for anyone writing about things you can't touch. Theories, assumptions, evidence, facts. The function of the clause here isn't just to describe something, it's to define it.
I think we really need to focus on that distinction. We're not modifying the noun, we're not saying which idea, we are explaining what the idea is.
Exactly. Think of it like this. An adjective clause might tell you about the car that is red. It's just describing it. But an appositive clause tells you about the news that the factory is closing. It's giving you the actual content of the noun news.
The substance of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the structure is pretty simple on the surface. You have an abstract noun, then the word that, then a complete sentence.
Right. But the power here is knowing which abstract nouns really need the structure to work.
Why is it so crucial for certain types of nouns?
Because those nouns are just empty containers without the clause. You can't see or touch an assumption or a fact. It has no meaning until you fill it with content. The appositive clause is what fills the container.
Okay, let's go through the categories of these nouns from our source material.
Yeah.
This is basically a roadmap for analytical writing.
First up, you have ideas and beliefs. So words like idea, belief, assumption, theory, thought. If you just say the theory is controversial, the immediate question is what theory?
Right. The appositive clause has to answer that. The theory that the universe is a hologram is controversial.
Exactly. Then you have judgments and opinions. Words like opinion, conclusion, assessment, suggestion. These are the results of some kind of thinking process.
Like, the committee reached the conclusion that more funding was needed.
Perfect. The third category is facts and news. These are objective claims. So fact, truth, evidence, news.
The evidence that the fingerprints matched was undeniable. The clause is the evidence itself.
And the last one is emotions and psychology. Words like fear, concern, suspicion, doubt, feeling. These abstract states need their content defined.
He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched.
Exactly. And you can see how the complexity of the grammar scales with the complexity of the idea.
Let's look at the examples. The B2 one is pretty straightforward. The fact that the plan failed disappointed the entire team. The clause that the plan failed literally is the fact.
Right. But then you move to C1 and it gets more conceptual. The assumption that technology guarantees efficiency is often misleading.
So the clause that technology guarantees efficiency is the exact content of the assumption that's being challenged. Without it, the assumption is often misleading, is, grammatically fine, but completely meaningless.
It's conceptually empty. And at the C2 level, you use this to handle really weighty or controversial ideas with precision.
The example here is powerful. The disturbing truth that the data had been manipulated undermined public trust.
Yeah, all the ethical weight, the core of the problem, the manipulation is carried precisely by that appositive clause. It defines what the disturbing truth actually is. In high-stakes communication, you need that kind of clarity.
Okay, so this brings up a practical point about clarity. We often drop the word "that" in conversation. I might say, I think he's right. But the sources here say that in these formal appositive structures, you really shouldn't omit that. Why is keeping it in so important?
It's a signpost for the reader. When you're writing formally, keeping that in after an abstract noun signals very clearly. Okay, get ready. A complete sentence is coming that will define this noun I just mentioned.
So it prevents any momentary confusion.
Exactly. If you drop it, the reader might stumble for a split second trying to parse the grammar. Keeping that in just makes the whole structure more robust and instantly clear. It's a small thing that adds a lot of formal rigor.
Okay, this is the moment where we put it all together. Section 4. Distinguishing appositive clauses from adjective clauses. This is the practical skill that I think really separates the good from the great.
It is the acid test for sure, because they both can start with that. They look similar, but their function is completely different.
So let's just hammer this home one more time.
An adjective clause. It modifies, it describes, it answers the question, which one?
And an appositive clause? It defines. It explains the content. It answers the question, what is it?
That's the entire distinction right there.
The sources use the noun report to show this side by side, which I think is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, it's a great comparison. So let's take the adjective clause first. The report that was published last week caused controversy.
Okay, so the clause that was published last week is just telling me which report, not the one from last year, the one from last week. It's descriptive.
Exactly. And notice a key grammatical clue. The word "that" is the subject of the verb "was published." And if you remove the clause, the sentence still works just fine. The report caused controversy.
Right. Now let's contrast that with the appositive clause example. The report that the company had falsified its earnings caused controversy.
See the difference? Now the clause is explaining the content of the report. It's telling us what the report said.
And the grammar is different too. Here, that isn't the subject. The subject is the company, and the verb is had falsified. That is just a connector.
Precisely. And here's the semantic test. If you take away that appositive clause, you're left with the report caused controversy. And while that's grammatically okay,
it's meaningless. You've lost the entire point of the sentence. The reason why there was controversy is gone.
So the appositive clause is semantically mandatory. It's essential for the idea to make sense. That's a huge clue.
So to make this really practical, let's go through the 3-step identification method from the source material. This is like a toolkit you can use when you're editing your own work.
Yep, it's a great little checklist. So you see a "that" clause after a noun, and you're not sure what it is. Step 1.
Is the "that" clause a complete sentence?
This is the first filter. Does the clause have its own subject, its own verb? If that is acting as the subject, like in the report that was published, then it's an adjective clause. If the clause is a full sentence on its own, like the company have falsified earnings, then you can move to step 2.
Okay, step 2. Does it explain the content of an abstract noun?
Right. You look at the noun just before that. Is it a concrete thing, like a chair or a building? Then it's probably an adjective clause. Is it one of our abstract nouns, an idea, a fact, a fear, an assumption? If so, you're almost certainly looking at an appositive clause.
And finally, step 3. Does removing the clause make the abstract noun unclear or conceptually empty?
This is the semantic check we just talked about. If the main idea falls apart because the noun is left hanging, if the suggestion was rejected, it doesn't make sense until you know what the suggestion was, you have 100% confirmed it is an appositive clause.
Okay, let's run an example through the method. How about the possibility that the funding would be withdrawn caused alarm?
All right, step 1, is the clause a complete sentence? The funding would be withdrawn. Yes, it is. Subject, verb.
Step 2, does it explain an abstract noun? Yes, the noun is possibility. That's definitely abstract.
And step 3, if we remove it, we get the possibility caused alarm. Does that feel incomplete?
Totally. It immediately makes me ask what possibility. So, check. It's an appositive clause.
Perfect. Now let's try a tricky adjective clause. The document that proved the fraud was leaked to the press.
Okay, step 1. Is that proved the fraud a complete sentence? No. That is the subject of proved. It fails the first test.
So we already know it's an adjective clause. It's just modifying which document. And if we check step 3 for good measure, the document was leaked to the press is a perfectly complete thought.
This method is so useful. It just takes the guesswork out of it. Once you can do this, you've really mastered the difference between defining an idea and just describing its container.
So we've been through pronouns, inversion, 2 different kinds of clauses. They might seem like separate topics.
They do, on the surface.
Yeah.
But as we get to the synthesis here in Section 5, it's clear there's a powerful common thread running through all of this.
And it's exactly where we started this deep dive. Every single one of these grammar points is a test of the exact same skill, understanding the precise function of a clause within the larger sentence.
It's fascinating when you see it that way. With whoever and whomever, we saw that the internal grammar of the small clause can actually override what's happening in the main sentence.
Right. And with so and neither, we saw how the verb structure in the first clause completely dictates the grammatical form of the second one.
And then we spent all that time isolating the 2 main jobs that clause can have. The descriptive modifying job of an adjective clause versus that essential definitional job of an appositive clause.
Understanding these roles is the real difference between just writing correct sentences and writing truly sophisticated, efficient, and powerful ones. It's the leap from B2 to C2.
So let's connect this back to you, the listener. Why go through all this trouble? Why is this level of precision so important?
Well, first, it's about academic clarity. Academic arguments are all about complex, nested ideas. If your sentence structure is ambiguous, if your reader can't tell if you're defining a concept or just describing it, your argument loses its power instantly. This gives you surgical precision.
And second, I would think it dramatically strengthens your argumentative writing.
Huge. When you're working with concepts like truth, evidence, or assumption, using a positive clause correctly allows you to state your premise with such confidence. You write, the undeniable fact that the experiment failed, and the structure itself projects authority.
And the third benefit is on the other side of the coin. It helps your reading comprehension.
Oh, absolutely. When you're faced with a really dense academic paper or a technical report full of multi-clause sentences, you don't get stuck anymore. You can instantly parse the sentence because you recognize the structures, you know what each clause is doing, which saves a ton of time and mental energy.
So grammar isn't just about rules, it's about structure. And structure is about controlling how your reader receives and understands information.
It's about controlling the narrative. And that brings us to a final thought for you to take away. We've talked a lot about the C2 level of control, so consider this. Think about how much the meaning changes based on your choice of clause. If you write, the policy that the committee approved was a disaster, that's an adjective clause. You're just modifying the policy. But if you write, the policy that all funding would be cut was a disaster, you've used an appositive. You are defining the content of the policy itself. The structure itself assigns the reason for the disaster. When you can wield grammar with that kind of precision, you're not just reporting information. You are shaping the interpretation. You are controlling the narrative, whatever the consequences may be.
That is the level of sophistication we are all aiming for. Thank you so much for following along with this deep dive. You now have the blueprints, you have the 3-step tool, you have what you need to seriously level up the clarity and sophistication of your writing, so go apply it. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.